This is the Unit 6 Study Guide Objective 2 video. We'll be working on questions 5 through 8. I will show you using the X method when necessary, but all of these are solved by factoring. Okay, so we look at number 5. The first thing you want to try to do is take out a GCF. It'll make your life easier. The numbers will be smaller. It's not impossible to do without taking out a GCF, but it's definitely easier. So you look at 3 and 75. I know that 3/4 equals 75, which is the same as 3 times 25. So I know 3 goes into both of these. So I'm going to divide both of them by 3. And so you get 3 out here. Okay, x squared will come down, and then minus 25 equals 0. Okay, so now there's several ways you could do it. You could see that this is difference of squares, and you're going to get x minus 5, x plus 5, or if you don't see that, we can do the x method. So we're going to look at the x method. We have 1, and this is our a, and our c is here. We don't have a b. Okay, so if I had to write it out over here, a equals 1, b equals 0, and c equals negative 25. I know that the c is the negative 25 and not the b because it does not have an x on it. B has to have the x on it. Okay, so then you do 1 times negative 25, which is negative 25, and then I need it to be 0. So I need the two numbers that will multiply to give me 25 and subtract to get me 0. So 5 minus 5 gives me 25, and I subtract to get me 0. Okay? And then this becomes x plus 5 and x minus 5. And don't forget to bring down your 3 equals 0. Okay? So we now will solve anything that has an x in it by setting it equal to 0. Okay? Well, 3 doesn't have an x in it, so we kind of toss it out. We don't need it for this particular type of problem. Okay? So I go, well, x plus 5 equals 0. And then I subtract 5, x equals negative 5. And if you'll notice, it's really just the opposite of what's here divided by what is here. Positive 5 becomes negative 5, and we divide it by nothing because there's nothing there. So that's one of our solutions. Then we take this one, x minus 5 equals 0. We add 5 to both sides, and x equals 5. Okay? Opposite of negative 5 is positive 5, and we divide it by nothing. Okay? And so you get these two numbers here. Okay? So now this one was fairly easy. You should have not really had any problems finding the factors because you should know 5 times 5 is 25 and 5 minus 5 is 0. Okay? Let's look at question 6. Okay? Notice how this one equals 20. Our first one equaled 0. That's why we were able to go through all these processes right here and find our answer. So in order to solve this one, we have to have it equal to 0. Okay, so we need to move this 20 over here to this side of the equation. Okay, so like on this side of the equal sign. Now, there is no number that's over here that doesn't have a letter. This has a squared, an x squared, excuse me, and this has an x. And this doesn't have a letter, so it has no like terms over here. So what we're going to do is it basically becomes our c term, and it's going to shimmy right in between this 7x, or this negative 7x, and this equal sign. Okay? And to get it over here, we need this to equal to 0. So how do you get 20 to equal 0? You subtract 20 from it. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. And you end up with 6x squared minus 7x. And then we're going to shimmy the minus 20 in there, equals, and 20 minus 20 is 0. Okay, so now we've got it equal to 0. Then we're going to try to take out a GCF. And there is nothing that goes into 6 and goes into 7. Since there's nothing that goes into there, there's nothing that will go into all three of these. So now we're going to move on to our x. We're going to do our a, which is 6, times negative 20, which is our c. Okay? And so you get negative 120. And then you're going to bring down your b, which is negative 7. Now 120 is a big number, I know. So you guys are probably going to struggle with finding factors that will multiply to give you 120 and add or subtract to give me negative 7. So I'm going to show you how to do this in your calculator. Turn your calculator on. Go to y equals. Make sure it's clear of everything. You're going to take your top part of the x, make it negative 120. You're going to divide it by x, where it's negative 120 on top of x. It's on top of our x. Then you're going to write the same exact thing in your calculator. Okay? And then we want the numbers to add to negative 7. So we're going to add for the x. Okay? So it's negative 120 is on top of the x. We've got negative 120 on top of the x. And then we need it to add in our x to the bottom. Okay? That's the best way I can describe it. So now you're going to press second and graph, which is the table. Okay? And we're going to look in our y2 for this negative 7. And if you look, the numbers start going negatives, but they're going down towards 7. So I'm going to press down until I get to 7. And if you look, negative 7's right here. Okay? And that means 8 and negative 15 are our values inside of our x. So I'm going to put 8 and negative 15 in here. Okay? Now this is a part where a lot of people get it wrong because they don't pay attention to the process. So our a is 6. We have to write the 6 here, and then our variable goes on it. Then you bring in that positive 8 and that negative 15. Okay? And then you say, okay, what goes into 6 and goes into 8? Well, that's a 2. So you get 3x, and then that's plus 4. And then what goes into 6 and goes into 15? Well, that's 3. So you're going to divide by 3, divide by 3. And so then you get 2x's and negative 5 equals 0. Now let's say you forgot how to do this. So I'm going to show you real quick in your calculator one last time. Okay? So I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to try to find the GCF. And to do that in the calculator, you're going to hit Math. You're going to press the right button, and you're going to go down to 9. And it says GCD, which is the greatest common divisor. Very similar to greatest common factor. Okay? And then for 6 and 15, I'll type 6, comma, 15. Close parentheses, press enter, and it'll tell you that 3 goes into it. If you wanted to do it for 6 and 8, you just repeat the process. Math right 9. You use 6, comma, 8, close parentheses, enter, and you hit 2. So that's where I got the 2 from. This is where I got the 3 from. Okay? So back to our question. Now, using our previous example over here, I said it's just the opposite divided by the front number. So what's the opposite of 4? Negative 4. So x equals negative 4 divided by our front number, which is 3. And negative 4/3 becomes our answer. Then we do that same thing here. It's the opposite of this number, so it'd be positive 5 divided by the front number, which is 2. And I'll solve this one off to the side for you so you can see why it does that. Okay, so we'd add 5 to both sides. Get 2x equals positive 5, and then you have to divide by 2. And so you get x equals 5 over 2. Okay, so that is the same thing as this. I was just showing you that when you set it equal to 0, it does the same thing our shortcut does. So these are our two answers right here. Okay? So now, looking at question number 7, does this one equal 0? No, it doesn't. So we need to move this to the other side. Okay? So I'm just clearing some space out. You look, it has just an X on it. Does anything over here have just an X on it? No, it doesn't. Well, if just an X means it's our B, which means it goes in the middle. We needed to put it right in the middle. Okay? So I'm going to write, how do you move a positive 9x to the other side? Or how do you make 9x 0 because we wanted to equal 0? Well, you would just subtract 9x's. And you subtract 9x from this side too to balance the equation. 9x minus 9x is 0, so put 0 equals, and then it doesn't combine with anything, so we just drop everything down, and then shimmy that 9x in there in between the 2x squared and the negative 5. Okay? So, we have a quadratic again. 2, 9, and 5 don't have a greatest common factor, so we'll move to our x. And so you do 2 times negative 5, which is negative 10, and then you put negative 9 here. Now one thing that helps me with a problem like this is it's only 1 away from 10. So I know it is going to be 1 and that number. So I'm going to put 10 and 1, and then it needs to be negative 10 because it's a negative 9 and a plus 1. Negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9. Negative 10 times 1, negative 10. Okay? So then we draw our parentheses. Set it equal to 0. You take your front number here, we'll take this one, which is 2, and you put that x on it, and then you put minus 10, and then plus 1. What goes into 10 and 2? Well, that's a 2, so you divide them both by 2, and you get x minus 5, and 2x plus 1 equals 0. And the answer is going to be x equals positive 5, and x equals negative 1, because it's the opposite of this, over 2. Okay? Number 8. We look, it's set equal to 0. Great, that's a good first step. Now we're going to look to see if there's a greatest common factor, and there is. They all have 6 in common. So I'm going to divide it all by 6. Okay? And so you get 6 parentheses, and then you get x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Okay? And then we're going to see if this trinomial will factor. Well, it doesn't have a leading coefficient, which makes it really easy. Okay? So we're going to try the x. You do 1 times negative 4, which is negative 4. And then 3 goes on the bottom. And then it's only 1 away. So you know it's 4 and 1. And then that's positive. So that's positive. So we need to subtract 1. 4 minus 1 is 3. Bring down that 6. Parentheses. Bring down my lead coefficient of 1. Close parentheses. Put the other x in there. And then you have plus 4 and minus 1 equals 0. Okay? Nothing has the GCF that'll come out. And so now we're going to solve anything that has an x. We'll use that and set it equal to 0. Does 6 have an x? Nope. He kind of just goes away for this problem. And then x will equal negative 4 because it's the opposite of this divided by that. So it's negative 4 divided by nothing. Okay? And then you look here, x equals, and then you have negative 1, so we'll make it positive 1 divided by nothing. These become our final answers. This concludes Objective 2, solving quadratic functions. And they were all factorable, just as they will be on your test. So if you know how to factor, this will be really easy for you. Please move on to Objective 3.